Hello, we're back.
Hello.
For those of you, most of you, I dare say, who have no idea who we are the Overlap Rugby podcast.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
We have been AWOL for 11 months now, according to YouTube.
Yeah, just checking on the last video. I think in the last video we were saying we had been 2 weeks since the previous one, and we're hoping to try and boost consistency since then, or try and get more regularity after that. Yeah, that didn't happen.
Yeah, indeed.
Two things got in the way. We've moved location, as you can see, to figure out a different way to frame it and shoot it, and we've still been watching rugby.
For sure.
Just haven't found the chance to consistently get the podcast going, so sorry about that to all of our subscribers.
All 20 of you.
I think there are more than that.
I think there's about 20 of them, and I feel like we let you down a bit by just disappearing and not mentioning it. But we're back. For those of you who don't know, Daragh, Shane, two brothers from Dublin, big rugby fans, and boy oh boy, it's been a year. But basically, right now we're back. We're going to hopefully get right back into the swing of things with the podcast, which is just going to exist on the YouTube channel, and then thereafter we're also going to try, or I'm going to try and post a few little breakdown videos, hopefully on the weekends, maybe with any luck, every second Sunday, just short little breakdown vids, so keep an eye on that. And we've also launched a blog that I've posted a couple of things on it already just during the Rugby Championship about those sides. And that's going to be up. The link will be in the description, I guess. It's a WordPress blog, but we're also going to occasionally post things on that and keep you abreast of what's going on. So we're hoping to build something, I guess, chat about rugby. We missed it, and
absolutely.
Boy oh boy, I mean, when you left us last year, we were raving about the Chiefs. We thought the Chiefs were unreal. We were a little jarred and disappointed with Leinster. We didn't really know where Ireland were going to be, and boy oh boy, what a year. All the gloating we could have done.
I know. We've missed the boat on that one.
Leinster decided to model themselves on the Chiefs, bring in James Lowe, start absolutely tearing it up, and won the double. In the meantime, Ireland did a grand slam, went over to Australia and won a series, and
England have been in flounder-some form as well, which is always a bit of fun from an Irish point of view, but we have autumn internationals coming up now, so it's kind of, we need to take stock of where everyone's standing, but before then we've also got European rugby, which is just underway. We obviously missed a whole Super Rugby season, which was unfortunate, because we would have liked to have got into that and started breaking down some of those. Some of the run towards the finals were great. Crusaders, very, very impressive.
Very good. And sort of like, well, what seems to be Leinster, they just head and shoulders above everybody, and it's almost depressing. It's this sort of, and we'll get into it as time goes by and we got to shoot this podcast. This will just be a short one, I think, just to sort of get back in the swing of things, but certainly like that competition has been gutted. You know, we lost the Western Force. The Chiefs was such a great team, and they're gone. All of them are gone, dotted across Europe.
Mackenzie's still there.
Dave Rennie's gone. Kieran Keane's gone. All the players, I mean, Cruden.
Yeah, it's true. It's that whole team they built.
The whole team is gone, dead. James Lowe, the works. And what's left is the Crusaders, just the All Blacks, who just blown everybody away.
Yeah, very, very impressive, though. They're like a well-oiled machine. And we missed. Obviously, there are some articles up, but we missed covering the Rugby Championship, which we always love watching as well, which threw up a few more points of interest this year, I thought.
For sure.
South Africa's resurgence is something you've been pining for ages. One of the pieces that we have up on the WordPress thing is on South Africa as well, and South African rugby, and kind of just longing for it to be restored to some kind of like identity based kind of thing. It's not entirely just former glories, but it's just some of the leaking of tries that they've been doing, and some of the manner in which they've been losing has been really disappointing. And to see them kind of galvanised around. I know you're a huge fan with Sia Khaleesi being the captain now. Instead, that's happened since the last time we were here. He's been excellent for them.
Well, it's just for like even under Alistair Coetzee, which is obviously when we were talking about this the last time, they were always this this for me, they were just full of talent. Like you put the pieces together, their pack is just one of two others maybe in Test rugby themselves in Ireland who can compete with that All Black pack. And loads and loads of talent in the backline as well, loads of great domestic players, loads of great players playing abroad. I mean, rugby at a grassroots level is quite healthy in South Africa, I won't tell you that.
So it's always been a
what
bit
was
of
going on under Coetzee was madness, and it was maddening to see, and you could still feel, and I still do feel, that they can put a run together in the World Cup. yeah, so going forward, happy out. The rugby championship was great. Was great. I loved seeing them beat the All Blacks. I loved seeing them put it up to the All Blacks.
Yeah.
Funny story about that match. We were watching it. We've been going to the Leinster match, and we were watching it. It was clashing with the Leinster match, and we left with 20 minutes to go. Left the pub, and they had won, but we had to make our seats. Kick off was in 20 minutes, so we had to go and then find out via phone while we were in the ground that the All Blacks had done an All Blacks on it and come and won. And it's obviously fantastic.
It wasn't too surprising, but it was because I think the last thing we'd seen was it Rico Ioane's try, the strike back just after they scored. It happened very, very quickly. It happened off one or two phases, and it was just right, okay. So they kind of kicked into gear and kicked on from there. It's very impressive, but it's good to see the gap kind of closing, and just like, not even that the gap's closing, but just some resistance in the Rugby Championship to All Black dominance is a good thing in this side of the World Cup as well. It's maybe dangerous for other sides that the All Blacks are facing, ourselves included, because they don't tend to lose too many games in a year, and it'll sharpen their focus.
We'll see what happens as fans of Ireland and Leinster. Like, when we were very analytical before, but just as fans, it's just been a joyous year. Basically everything you'd have wanted to see has happened for Ireland, for Leinster, for South Africa, even from my perspective, who would be my second
pet team.
my pet team. On from there, the only thing that's depressed me in world rugby really in the last year has been the state of Australian rugby, and Michael Cheika failing basically to put the pieces together of not exactly working with.
I still don't level all the blame on him, because it's like there's not a lot you can do, Joe. Like, we watch Super Rugby, and anyone who has, is just, they're not as good as the other teams in the Rugby Championship. They don't have the players. Like, Ned Hannigan's still getting regular game time, which, like, I don't like naming names like that, but it's just like the caliber of player he is versus someone like Brodie Retallick in the All Blacks. Like, you're lining him up against, like, there's no way he's going to match the workload and the impact that he's making. Their type 5 is still a huge issue, and they just don't have rotation. That's actually another point I was thinking on, because obviously European rugby has started up, and first, as we shoot this, we've had one weekend which saw, like, we were at the game. Wasps got absolutely beaten out the gate of the RDS. They put up a bit of resistance at the start, but they couldn't keep the ball. They were very panicky, and then the dam kind of burst either side of half time after Linus Apuanga's card. But a lot of the media swirl that I've heard since then is all about the same kind of stuff that comes up all the time, with the Premiership clubs bemoaning the fact that the Pro 14 clubs don't have or are afforded an opportunity to rest their players. Is certainly the way it's put. But I'm looking over at the Premiership, and I was watching a few of the highlights and some of the games, just trying to think on my point on this, because every time I hear that said, it's like you get to rest your players, and I'm just thinking that you have to rest your players to get through a season, to get through a campaign anyway, in any competition. And it's the same in top couture. They have like two squads. Granted, they're buying them more than Leinster grassroots up, but we're very proud of the fact that in Leinster it's kind of a machine churning out homegrown talent, but there's still multiple options in every position, and they get game time. Like, I was watching some Premiership highlights, and all the tries are from the same group. Like, you'll have Wasps, and they've brought in obviously Villy LaRue and all these players that they're expecting to carry. Then Bath, there's like people like Priestland and Roberts, and with the wage cap thing combining with like just not being able to retain players, their squads are actually getting smaller, and they have these few marquee players that they're hoping to win the whole season for them. I was like, that's not the way it works. Like, it's overvaluing the individual and undervaluing the team. Seems to be a huge problem. Like, they're saying, like, and it was Jordan Murphy came out with it after Leicester, who were beaten soundly by Ulster, and Ulster have had a ropey start of the season. They actually managed to win a couple of games with rotten performances to begin with, and then got spanked in the Irish derbies beforehand. But Leicester offered futile resistance to them, and he was making the point, like, he'd rather be coaching England because they have Tom Youngs, who's playing 6 or 7 games for him, whereas Rory Best is having a rest into the new season. And I'm just thinking, it's like, why are you picking him for all those games? Like, why can you not go to, like, you need to stagger your Premiership campaign and have, like, it's not about picking an A team or a B team, but like Leinster have been implementing it for years, where, like, even going back to 2011 when there was the second centre partnership we had of Owen O'Malley and Fergus McFadden, who would start a slew of games, but it wouldn't be an entire B team. They'd be backed up by experience either side. They don't.
The argument is that, like, and it's not a good argument overall, because the size of England compared to the size of Ireland, I know they have loads of franchises, but even the size of London compared to the size of Dublin. But when you have a club like Bath, which is a town of however many people. Like there isn't an ability to generate that kind of grassroots thing, which is why the whole setup where the ORFU isn't even involved in these with these clubs is kind of mad. And so. Well, and then when you add a salary cap to it, and you're basically scrambling for foreign players to compete, there's an issue with that.
Well, so it's misguided as well, because like it's the Champions Cup, apropos of the English and French clubs' kind of combined interests to try and augment the way it was before. Sort of like there are a lot of ins and outs, but the consensus is sort of to try and benefit themselves, but it kind of had a negative effect, or wasn't recognising the problem, I think, because I think the Premiership has had this problem for a long time, and it's only now really manifesting itself properly, where it's like you're all the clubs are accruing debt. I think it's Exeter are the only club that aren't in debt at the moment. The rest, all the other clubs in the Premiership are running a negative. And at the same time they're buying in all these overseas players, and they're capable, like people like Liam Supawonga was on the pitch for Wasps. I don't know what's his name, who they just brought in, and number 8 for they brought him in for his England. Brad Shields. He was at number 6. But all these players, you're buying in all these players. Billy LaRue had failed the HIA the week before. He was flown in to play as well. You're going to spend all this money to bring these players in, and they're capable of a capitulation like that, because there's no team like they're really like.
Well, there is for English rugby. There is a solution, and that solution is I think they're on the way to doing that, but basically what it's going to be is an end to the system as it is. So the Premiership is going to stop being a relegation system. They're probably going to bring up one more team. Like it's touch and go whether London Irish make the cut or if they just keep the league as is. But essentially what they're going to do is cut off relegation, have this is our professional league, these are our professional franchises. And then the solution to getting them working is to work with the ORFU, work with the underage systems. Where how do the young kids who are playing rugby, even in Manchester or these places, where do they go, and how does that work? Is it just scouts from the clubs, or is there a centre base? Because the great thing about Irish rugby is, I mean, New Zealand rugby is a whole other thing when they have schools but they do have their own schools that are flowing through, but there's so much talent all across the islands of New Zealand. Like it's fairly even keeled all across the islands, which isn't true in other countries. But in Ireland we have this centre hub that is the Leinster Academy system, which is so professionally run, and I'm not sure if any of the English franchises are capable of sustaining or building something like that, so it has to be the ORFU. And there has to be a system put in place for how do these players get to these clubs. Is it just scouts pick them out, or do we divvy them out? And eventually I think that's the way they're going to go down.
I would hope so. But, like currently it's not tenable, because like just even watching some of the like it was actually at the Bath game. Bath was a good example as well, where Priestland came out after the game, obviously after Freddie Burns had a nightmarish moment that has been heftily covered in the aftermath as well. It was not good, but what actually came to the surface was that Homer, one of their other players, did the same in a game a few weeks prior. I don't know if you saw
I didn't see that.
They did this pretty much the same mistake. And Priestland came out saying, if we've done this twice in as many weeks, or in a few weeks, maybe there's something wrong in the culture of the club. And it's quite a big statement. Like, and I think it was mismanaged entirely. And Todd Blackadder's doing. It's not entirely him, but like something's amiss at Bath. And I think a lot of it stems from the fact that, like, even looking across their team sheets, like, where are the English players? Where's the identity here? I don't know what they're quite trying to do. They're very laboured. It all translates. It bleeds into their style of play as well. They're very laboured and slow, and like they are still physical. They're big boys, and they should have won that game. They had that game won, but for these mistakes. But I'm just, in terms of engaging your fan base even as well, and just sustaining a season, because if you want a season is, even if they do cap the relegation and stuff and stop that, you're still going to be managing a season where you're playing your games in the Premiership and in Europe for the clubs that qualify anyway, and the ones under. You're going to need to manage your resources, whereas at the moment it seems like there's still the notion of the first 15. They're the team that are going to carry you through, and eventually they get tired, and then they're always citing that they're tired because they have to play more games. But you're thinking, where's their Ross Byrne? I suppose from a Leinster point of view, that's my point. Like whenever I look at any of these clubs, I'm going like, where's their Ross Byrne? Because I was watching his highlights as well in preparation. He scored and contributed to tries against Northampton. He's played in big games,
of course,
because we trust him.
I think Leinster in that context, I think everyone should be working towards there, but I don't think it's reasonable to ask Bath in their current position to be that. But I think in a broader sense, in terms of what they're doing wrong on the pitch, You're right. You're right in the sense that it's like you can't just bring in players and make them be things. I think the template, the better template, rather than Leinster, which is this huge infrastructure, this huge population, this huge amount of money, the better template that other people should be looking at across Europe. And this isn't an English exclusive thing, although there is a problem in England for sure. But the reason that a lot of clubs aren't at the level, because we're looking beneath Leinster and we're really not seeing much that can compete with them at the moment. There's a handful of clubs maybe who could come close.
In terms of contenders, there's maybe Racing, Munster.
But if you look at a team that actually did do Leinster and did win a tournament that didn't, like, they were out of nowhere, they didn't deserve to be anywhere near there, you would have thought, but they got it just by earning it, was Connacht and their Pat Lam. And Pat Lam's philosophy was, it wasn't a case of, he brought in one or two guys, he got Bundy Aki to follow him, he actually got Mills Muliaina in, but his whole philosophy was just, let's get the balls, let's get the players playing a bit of footy, let's get the players, let's get some very simple attacking structures going, and let's have guys be skillful, and that's 1 to 15, that's props, that's second rowers, that's back rowers, everyone's going to be skillful, everyone's going to be able to catch pass, everyone's going to be thinking about where the space is, and we're going to move quickly, we're going to clean out rucks quickly, we're going to move the ball quickly, we're going to be in position quickly, and we're going to find tries. And that was a beautiful season. I think that was the 2016 season, and I know it's simple to say any club can do that, but that's the process for any club like Bath that wants to be at the high level of Europe.
2 steps backwards to go like 7 or 8 forwards, because you're going to actually build something. Like Pat Lam left and went off to Bristol, where he's now going about building something. Granted, they haven't had a great start to the season. I think they're 2-6 or 3-6 or something. They're near the bottom. I think they're third from the bottom, but they still have a chance to stay up. But he's actually built something sustained in the tier below as well. But when he left Connacht, he left him in a much better place. Now, granted, what happened then, the coaching tenure of what was his man's name?
Kieran Keane
didn't end up working out. There was something wrong.
They're a much better team than they ever were before.
Exactly.
They were whipping boys, and now, even though like it's a bit like Leicester's football club, you know, even though they reached the dizzying heights of being champions, which Connacht did obviously, but what they've left behind once it's simmered down is a team that can make the playoffs, and a team, I know they're in the Challenge Cup this year, but they're a team that's going to be hoping to be in the Champions Cup.
And I think actually you can extend that point to a thought that within the Pro 14, which I know often gets flack from other leagues for not being as good. Not people in the know, and the new look Pro 14, including these South African teams, like we missed last season as well. That was the first one. I think it's a vast improvement. The conferences still maybe a little flawed in places, but it's a really good, colourful competition, and there are good games, and I think there's a general rise in competence of teams. Like you're looking at Edinburgh, like Connacht is a great example, because I remember 10 years ago when you were playing Connacht, it was a miserable game, and they were going to injure half your team, and they were still going to lose by 20 points and you wouldn't see many tries. It would be ugly. Same was true of Edinburgh. Leinster, I know pre Joe Schmidt Leinster, even during Cheika's era, we struggled sometimes to oust Edinburgh when we felt we were a better team, but we got dragged down, and they had a habit of doing that. Those two teams now are looking to pass the ball a bit more. They're actually scoring more tries. The games in general are higher scoring. There's a team, and now the Italian teams as well being the other obvious example. They're actually just displaying competence in structures instead of just being a floundering mess. And their only hope, they're coached into negative play to try and destroy and disrupt the game for as long as possible, to hold out as long as possible, which is just no way to improve and no way to play. It makes for horrible games. That's happening less and less. The exception being the Southern Kings. I'm going to forgive them. They've just joined. They're not a yeah.
I think they're going to go.
I think they're going to go.
I don't think there's anything there.
No.
There's no.
Cheetahs are good. They score tries.
Cheetahs are good, but Cheetahs is a genuine franchise club. I mean, in Bloemfontein they do have a bit of a fan base. I know cavernous stadiums, but they actually do have people who come to those games.
Yeah.
But the Kings don't have anybody coming to those games. They don't have anybody watching. They don't have any money. They're like, there's nothing there. It's like a made up franchise that doesn't belong in the competition. And going forward, in a broad business sense, what you're going to see is the Pro 14 and Super Rugby competing for the American market. Super Rugby trying to get a Hawaiian franchise in, and
something
Pro
like
14
that,
trying to get an East Coast franchise in. But it's
that's down the line. It is good growth in the interest of the game. Whereas what was and I don't like to be piling on the English teams, but the French teams, there's something similar as well. We've often bemoaned the Top 14 for being just a very slow league, and like to the point where teams like La Rochelle in last season, who just started to move the ball around a bit, had great success just by playing with a bit of pace, because they tend not to. They siphon the pace out of the games. But that being said, they do manage to slow a lot of European games down and be very physical in them as well. There's some method to the madness. It's just hard to, from an Irish rugby fan's view, a lot of what the French clubs and national team even does makes no sense. But it's such a different world that we're kind of willing, I'm certainly willing to waive that and think that like there's always going to be something sustainable there. And you showed me that great video of the Pro De game.
Yeah, there was a cracking little video that went viral of Bayonne Biarritz, that derby down in the west coast of France / almost Spain, with Biarritz playing Bayonne, and the Basque country, and the fans were loving it. And it's just evidence that rugby is there to stay.
French rugby's going nowhere, regardless of all the money that gets pumped in, and it's not economically viable. That's why, like, I think the English clubs, if they're taking any cues from France, that's misguided, because the money that's circulating there, like look at Toulon's season this year as well. It's great evidence of, like, even if you do buy the Galacticos, and he did for a year, and it was a barbarian side of World Cup winners led by Johnny Wilkinson, who bought into it, and they created they won 3 trophies, but they didn't really build any infrastructure there. And now that a little bit of interest has gone, and some of the purchases they made haven't been as good of late, because there's more money now in places like Racing. They haven't actually built anything sustainable, and the only way they'll get success is just to spend more again on new players. It's not a good look for any of it. You're much better off focusing on just the club side of it and cultivating some kind of thing. And that's like I respect Saracens even a bit more. We've made this point, like even a lot of their players are bought in, like players like Lizowski in the midfield came from Wasps, but he's still English. Like there's a culture there, and they seem to play like quite an English looking game.
They do.
And there's definitely a template there and a team there. I'm wondering now what the next step for Saris is. It's an interesting season for them as well.
When you look going forward in terms of where European rugby's at, it's an interesting question, because in a broad sense, what we have been saying and what we were saying a year ago when we were last here was Southern Hemisphere much more ahead, or certainly New Zealand much more ahead. And what we're sort of going around saying is that the template for getting there is where Ireland have gone, which is slow building and building this model where we're producing bunches and bunches and bunches of players, and that's great. But in terms of the macro scale of where rugby's at, where are England at, where are Wales at, where are Scotland at, where are France at, it's an interesting question. Yeah. When you look at what the
rankings have gone as higgledy-piggledy as I can remember them.
When you look at the French sides, when you look at how many players they're producing, what they're trying to do, you're right when you say building players, bringing in a bunch of players, bringing in all these new clubs. It's not proved fruitful for French rugby. It's not particularly proved fruitful in an economic sense or in a rugby sense for the top couture. In terms of making money, I don't think it has, and the fans are going to come anyway. The fans are going to come if it's Joe Blow down, like the cast fans are going to turn out for Joe Blow down the block, fighting against Joe Blow from down that block down in Toulouse. They're going to love that. But instead they go out and they see whatever Rockatagouni and all Rockatagouni's in Bath, but you see a bunch of Fijian flyers like Raka and Clermont and a bunch of Kiwis like Liam Messon who are hanging around, and guys like Stephen Sykes and journeymen from South Africa who are playing rugby, plying their trade down in France.
It's offered a good little market for those kinds of journeymen, pros, and retired All Blacks.
Yeah, but it's not being done. No, it's not being done in a way that's making money. It's not genuine.
The team that like Ireland are relatively recent to this, but we've felt for years that there's been something there. That there's like what Leinster, certainly we're very close to the ear to the ground as far as Leinster's concerned, and there's always been evidence, like even from school, like the school system's really good, and it's just like there's always been a sense that we're building something, and the All Blacks have been consistently the top of the rugby tree, and they also control their players from the inside with the All Blacks in mind as the top, and all the clubs do their thing, and all in service to
South Africa don't, but South Africa have this
huge playing population.
They have a huge playing population, but it's also, there's an interesting statistic that was posted today that I was reading, which is that in terms of all the countries all the capped players who played for their countries over the last year, it was what percentage of those players were born in that actual country. I'm not sure if I put that right, but what percentage of players born in for each test side were born in that country. And for Ireland it was something like 80%, but South Africa were the highest by far. It was something like 98%. and they are kind of like France in the sense that rugby is just eternally there. It's a huge part of their culture. It's never going away. People are coming out to those games. People love the sport.
France has been a tough few years for the national team.
But in the difference though, in terms of why they have a playing pool that's fine, and why France don't, is because they haven't had this massive intrusion. They have no difficulty getting their players playing professional rugby. There are probably more South Africans playing professional rugby than there are even Englishmen or anyone else.
Because true, I don't know.
Or certainly top level professional rugby in top divisions, Super Rugby, Currie Cup, European Top Tours, Pro De, and even forgetting Pro De, but Top Tours, Premiership. There's South Africans are all over, so the South African player base is fine. Australia is one of those ones where there's just no grassroots stuff at all.
Yeah,
so it's floundering in the wind.
But
with France, they've huge issues with actually getting those players playing because of the money that's taken over at the top level. And then with England, there's obviously huge grassroots as well, but as we've said, there's huge issues with
there's a disconnect
with how they're getting those players playing proper. They've no infrastructure for making those players into test level professional players, and there's certainly no control looking over that. And again, Wales and Scotland, just smaller playing populations again. So in terms of where the top sides are building, it's probably just looking.
I think Scotland are on the up. We know Scotland are on the up. And Edinburgh's improvement. They'll finish higher than they did last year, I think, in their thing. They're not going to be winning anything just yet, but Glasgow I think are suffering for the lack of a Finn Russell, but their pack has improved. They're still going to be thereabouts, and they're the two nationals, and they're going to be feeding into the national side.
Scotland is one of those countries that are doing everything right, but they're just a little bit smaller.
They're a bit behind as well. I think they're a few years behind in terms of other teams.
Wales again is one of those countries. Rugby's very healthy, just a smaller population, but like Ireland, they could mass produce some great players.
Yeah, Wales could be managed better.
If you look at where countries are in the broad sense in the world, you got New Zealand, you got Ireland, then you probably got Wales, Scotland, and you got New Zealand, Ireland, South Africa for me in terms of top level players. Then you got England, who are the dark horse, who could, and I think they will.
They're still.
No, but I think they will over in time. They're going to figure this out, and they are the fact. What's going to dawn on them is that England national rugby team is a better commodity than the Premiership. Yeah. And then when that dawns on them, then things are going to start changing, and they're going to be right up there, possibly even ahead of Ireland and everyone else.
They still
and then you have Wales, Scotland, but then France, you don't know. I think it's probably just going to flail in the wind for a good bit anyway. And then you have your Argentinas, who God only knows. Well, to be honest, God doesn't only know. It's just that I don't know. I don't know either. Yeah, there's something they do seem to have brilliant players.
They've been doing World Cup cycles before it was even a term, because they're never the same team between World Cups versus when it actually comes down to it. They're there to perform. Ireland have found that out the wrong way a few times.
But building forward in terms of what's going on in the grassroots, I just plead ignorant on that one. They're probably going to be there. There is a rugby culture and there is a rugby community. So in terms of what's going forward, in terms of for the World Cup next year, it's the only guys in the right frame at the moment are New Zealand and Ireland, and I'd be curious to see if anyone else can get there. Yeah. But in terms of building forward the top tier nations, you can very easily see, and it's just France really, but before anyone else, but also England right now are sinking in the wind, and certain countries doing it right are rising in the wind, which is good to see. Yeah. But on in terms of just this season, smaller level, the Champions Cup that happened last week. Yeah. Who's going to compete? Who's going to win that tournament? I mean, other than Leinster, it's a good question, isn't it?
Saris are there. Saris just played a lot of qualities in that Glasgow.
Superb game.
Yeah, it was a great game. Yeah. Because Glasgow matched them physically, which I didn't think they would. Their scrum stood up.
They did,
and they were thereabouts. They just weren't clinical enough, and they made the mistake of not kicking their three when it came to try and at least get in losing bonus point or even draw range, but Saris just managed that game.
Saris really managed the game. I mean, I don't think if they take the three, I think if they take the three, they probably lose at 16-6. I think Saracens were just that bit much better than them. I think they had to go for it and they just couldn't get through the Saracens.
They blew the line out straight away, which is unfortunate. A few of the key moments are still missing. You kind of notice. I think that was true of all. Like you were saying, you were a bit disappointed certainly with the Saturday of rugby. There were obviously there was the Freddie Burns moment, but there were a few games that. We're going to get flack from Munster fans. Munster should have won that game. That's the problem. Yeah. Munster, yes, going into the game would have bitten your hand off for a 1 point losing bonus point. as is their way. They manage their way through pool games better than most clubs in the competition. Exeter, however, I think are just really well drilled, solid side who still lack a bit of European nous, and Leinster exploited that last year to our benefit, and Munster failed to capitalise entirely. They got their draw, but given the wind the way it was, and there were tries there to be scored, and there was the win to be taken, and they just got a bit satisfied with it there. They need to expand a little bit more.
I mean, but exactly. And the teams that are going to compete with Leinster, Munster are in that group, and this is what's
Murray is still to come back. That's why I'm holding reserving judgment.
And Munster for sure are a great side. Saracens, super controlled, super composed. They're probably the only side. Well, no, they're one of a few sides who you look at how you're going to win the Champions Cup. There is a path there. It is a path that involves when they play when they play Leinster. It's Owen Farrell has to get the better of Sexton. Maro Itoje has to get the better of young lad James Ryan. But certainly they're in that group. You know, they've superb players, very much smarter than any other English team in terms of how they go about the game.
Definitely true.
They manage the game. They're going to have to figure out, they're quite formulaic, and I think back 11 months ago when we were last back, I was just singing their praises in terms of what they do on the pitch, because they were the guys who implemented the screenplay that everybody does now, that's just stock. You have your two distributors, you have your out half is on the ball, you have somebody running a short line, and then you have another distributor outside him, and you move off of that. There's a million and one different variations off that that a million and one different teams are now using. They implemented that, and they still do it probably better than anyone else. But their issue in both attack and defence is that now they're quite static and they're quite stuck in their rhythms, and they are going to have to learn to mix it up. And they're just even against Glasgow,
they're going to have resource around the fringes as well, because that's how Leinster punched them. And Glasgow took a while to cop it, but as soon as they started pounding those areas, there were inroads to be made.
That's their issue in
defence.
defence.
Injured as well, broke his arm.
Billy,
his left arm this time.
No, indeed. And God, you wonder. It's a bit of a Sean O'Brien situation over there. It's just constantly gone. But in terms of
in better news, Sean O'Brien's back.
But also it's one of those issues with that team. They're very, very stuck in their rhythms, and one of the things they do in defence is they resource the wide channels superbly, and it's one of the reasons why Glasgow got 12 points against them is because Glasgow just love going wide. It's a philosophy for them, and it was just stylistically the wrong matchup for them. They need to attack around those fringes, and they just couldn't get by them on the outside. You can't get outside Saracens. They're an excellent defensive team, but with that comes the weakness we saw in Dublin last year when they played Leinster. They were just attacked through the middle, a little Dan Levy James Ryan combo straight under the posts, and that's what you can do to that defence. There's always a weakness. So just they're very smart, they think well, but they stick in their systems, and it needs to be a little more on the feet thinking. But absolutely they can win that tournament. Montpellier would be another team who I think can win that tournament.
Have a few good weapons as well.
There are a bunch of injuries at the moment, but then if you can put the pieces back together, when you get Cruden back and you get all of these fantastic players who are in that team, you got a potential Cruden and Serfontaine, and Manny Nadolo on the wing is a strike man. I mean, there's just a lot of potential in that back line, and obviously a great pack as well with Bismarck, Duplessis and Pick'em and these guys. I mean,
I think they're going to be thereabouts. Racing now, I don't think they're going to fare as well as last year, despite the inclusion of Finn Russell
and Azebo. Two level heads, steer along.
They lost to Oyen at home earlier in the year.
They got
Buxis and Dusan as a halfback combination.
They're not Oyena.
Leon. Sorry, Leon. They lost to Leon. At home. That combination, despite a Zebo try where he just ran past Buxies who didn't ignore him. It was just I don't know.
To lose to that is bad, but they do have a way about them.
They do have a way about them come the business end. But I don't know who they can. I actually do rate Munster as proper contenders this year, where the last 2 years I have viewed them as a work in progress that's getting better, that has almost all the tools. Like obviously we rate Carberry hugely. He is such a loss to Leinster. Our loss is Munster's gain,
and Tadhg Burn as well.
Scarlets. I actually think Scarlets are a level below. They've taken about a Tadhg Burn sized step backwards, and it seems like their practice isn't like that. That was a very disappointing loss. Actually, we were very disappointed in Scarlets at the weekend because they didn't show anything.
They also didn't have Reece Patchell, who's their man.
Exactly, that's true.
They didn't have James Davis.
I know.
They didn't have Aaron Shingler.
Hadley Parks kept kicking the ball away.
Didn't have Barkley. They did have a Hadley Parks. But honestly, if there's a potential of a Scott Williams Jay Davis centre partnership, Hadley Parks can go take a walk.
He can go out. He can sit off.
But Scarlets for me, when you put all the pieces together, it's fitness dependent, but they're also a team that can,
they're a great club.
They can score and they can strike, and they're definitely good for a semi-final.
I hope
Munster though are I think they're probably bookies. No, they're probably not. Probably Racing.
They're close to my second favourites. The more I think about it, I know I'm still reserving judgment because what I want to see, and we still haven't because of Murray's absence through injury. But I suspect it's the kind of we don't know because he's withholding it. But I suspect it's the kind of injury that if he were playing in the Premiership, he'd be playing right now. But we're wrapping him in cotton bud. I don't know, but I suspect that's kind of the case. But in any case, we haven't seen it yet, and Albie Matson's been out, so it was Duncan Williams, which meant it was slow ball too often, and Carberry played well with it. Scannell, his other distributor, didn't see the ball as best.
Well, this is my point: is that when and a lot of people are rating Munster, and I rate Munster. I don't think Munster know how good Munster are.
Yeah,
they probably got when John Ryan plays tight head, they probably got the best scrum in Europe. They've when Niall Scannell throws the ball into the line out, they probably got one of the best line outs in Europe. They got a very good line out.
Peter O'Mahony is the best counter line out jumper in Europe. I think in Europe at the moment,
and for sure. So they've got all these weapons at set piece. They're tigerish at the breakdown, and they've got
weapons
a backline when you get it doesn't at 13 at the moment, whether take your pick of Goggin or Arnold or Chris Farrell ideally if he comes back. Very competent,
they're all playing
guys,
well.
Very competent centres, two excellent distributors at 10 and 12, tigerish defence, good wingers and a good solid fullback. They've got all the pieces, but there are two things that have been holding them back every single season when they get to the business end, and this is what I actually tweeted out a criticism of them last week and got a bit of stick for it because they were buzzing, and everything I've been reading this week has been what an excellent 2 points, and it's true in the sense that plodding your way through the group, they're in pole position, but in terms of what's actually missing from Munster and what's the reason that they didn't kill off an Exeter team that was dead in that second half. They were dead in that second half because they had no wind. Once Munster levelled the scores, they couldn't exit, they couldn't really do anything with the ball, they were beaten, and Munster didn't beat them, and it's weird that they didn't beat them, but there are two things that they failed to do, and those two things are killer instinct, scoring tries, turning pressure into points, and discipline. And these two things, discipline in terms of giving away penalties,
they give away a lot of penalties, stupid penalties.
Those two things remain unsolved, and they have held them back for years. And it's not that they can't solve them; it's just that for now they remain unsolved. And
so I think the reinstatement of Murray as general in chief at Petit General, if you like, at 9, and just that combination with Carberry, I think could provide that killer instinct. Because what I've been seeing at the start of this season is Munster slow up their own ball when they get into the 22. They break out into the 22 and then they just stop it, and it's not that the ruck ball's quick, they're actually dominating up front, which is part of their game plan, because it's more South Africa than All Black really. It's going to be kind of try and bludgeon first and score later, which is always going to be the Munster way, and there's nothing wrong with that. The try they did score, even though it was all off 9, it was just done quickly, and like the break that Tommy O'Donnell made just before CJ Stander cross was purely that quick ball, and then two slightly disorganised defenders clash heads because they haven't retreated properly, and it's like that's what you create with it. Even if it's simple as quick ball or simple as one-off runners, do it quickly, don't stop, and they always do. They seem to get to the 22 and then go, right, now you go there, we're going to set up here, and then slowly pick and jam, and it's like that's nuts. I think that they don't. I think 3 times. I think a lot apparently. When will you know? Yeah, indeed. Well, when I see. Yeah. I suspect that, no longer thinking suspecting, I suspect that Van Graan is missing a trick, and this is why I'm going to disagree with you and say that even though I think that personnel wise, if you put a good coach in their hands, I think they have absolutely the potential to win the European Cup. They absolutely do. They do. They have that now. They're not. First of all, they have no Conor Murray now, and so it's the perfect opportunity to play off Carberry a bit, and they won't do it. Scannell doesn't see the ball, doesn't distribute. Their backline, in terms of scoring points, their backline is pretty patternless. They do whip it wide a bit, they like to move it off pace. All of Carberry's highlight reels so far this season have come from chaos ball, from plays off kicks, return and stuff, those kind of tries. But it's better that they're scoring that is an improvement, because they haven't always converted those.
For sure. But in terms of winning games against the top sides who are going to be defensively smart, if everyone knows you're playing off Murray, if everyone knows what you're going to do, you're going to be narrow, you're going to be slow, they're going to defend it. If you have multiple options, and this is the perfect opportunity to trial running off Carberry, running off Scannell, moving the ball a bit, introducing a few patterns, introducing that Saracen screen, introducing a bit of variety and a bit of just chaos and confusion to defences.
Yeah.
But no, but just
speed and options.
Yeah, exactly, options, but also just something that puts a doubt in a defender, like some shape to it, some dummy runners, that kind of thing that's just absent from their play at the moment. This is the time to do it. When Murray comes back, then you'd have that extra impetus and that extra thing, and then you have Murray coming in there, and things can happen off 9, and he has that killer bullet pass in him now and that box kicking play. So they're a very good team with very good players, but I don't think they're being well coached at the moment, especially with what they're doing with the ball and giving away penalties, which is criminal.
It is criminal.
And I think it's going to cost them. I think it's going to cost them again, and I think the more they don't realise it, the more they're patting each other on the back for this result against Edinburgh and not looking at the holes in their game, the more they're setting themselves up to Exeter. The more they're setting themselves up to fail when April rolls around and the business end is here.
Well, it's happened twice before now in both semi-finals. In the Racing game, they weren't clinical at all, as I recall. They did miss their few chances and got into a bit of a firefight with the team that were superior to them. But it was the year before against Saracens that they were the most guilty of that, where they got up for the first half. And this is a point I meant to make about Leinster as well, where they're minding their output, where they're recognising the key moments in the game either side of half time, which is what happened in the Leinster game at the weekend. They scored a try, they managed to milk a yellow card and then scored a try just either side of half time, recognising that those 10 minutes are very, very crucial to the colour of the game. Whereas Munster those few years ago against Saracens produced a mammoth performance in the first half, bullied Saracens essentially, but only managed 6-all, or was it at half time, or 3-all, one or the other. And it was like, even you had Donegal O'Callaghan at halftime going like, I think this is good, 3 points for 3 points, we'll stay in it, not recognising that Saracens are a quality team and they're going to have their moments, and in their moments they're going to score tries. And
Donegal was at it again on co-commentary this week. He was giving it all the Munster philosophy. He was talking about, they get the ball. It was when they were playing into the wind, coming up on halftime, they got the ball in this 22, and he pipes in with this is a great opportunity to slow the ball down,
kill the
few minutes off that clock, get to half time.
Ask a New Zealander about that, they'll be going, what are you talking about? Try, it's over there, space.
Indeed, and it's just they gave Exeter way too much credit. Exeter are a beatable team.
They don't actually it's something Ireland are still guilty about, even under Joe Schmidt as well, where they do actually create tries, and you can see it's like they've gone through 8 phases and now there's a try over there. And like, we have, as fans, obviously we have the luxury of the coach's eye view, where we're looking at either the TV footage thing, or if you're at the stadium you have that macro kind of view down and you can see where the space is, and it's just recognising that on the pitch in the moment. Now Leinster are doing that very, very well. Ireland are still, they're getting better at it, but it's been a slow inclusion into their game. They're much more willing to, there's this notion that it's safer to go into contact, whereas passing is risky, and that's like, no, that's bullshit.
Actually, Exeter is guilty of it as anybody else. In that last play when they had a chance to steal the match, and they just, the way they felt they were going to, like, I mean, a drop goal was there. I know it's windy, but a drop goal was there to be if anyone has the techers to take it. They were deep in the 22. They refused to take it, and they're convinced. This the commentator says death by a million carries. They were going carry.
It's like I was saying, death by a million carries indeed, because they dropped it,
and then eventually you drop it. Every time you go into that contact, you're increasing the chances of something happening and you losing the ball.
Exactly. Either you drop it, or you get stripped, or you get poached. If there's a pocock equivalent, if there's a jackler on the opposition side, like, contact is not safe at all. It shouldn't be. Like, if you go through contact and do it quickly, and then there's a try somewhere on the pitch, and it's about giving it to your 10, giving them the tools, or off 9 sometimes, but giving them the time and the space to execute.
It's one of the things.
It's one of the things that we love about watching Scotland, actually. International side Scotland, like, they always go for that pass, and it doesn't always come off, but as soon as they've created this, or they feel they've manipulated the space such that there's a 2-on-1 or something out wide, they go for it.
And from our own country's perspective, it is a big difference between Leinster and Ireland. In Leinster, you're encouraged to go for it. In Ireland, you have 2 decision makers in the back line. You have Murray, you have Sexton, and everybody else is running a line that is designed for them. And so essentially, Gary Ringrose has actually, to be fair, in the Six Nations and Grand Slam year, he did do some good distribution and good attacking space, and actually set up a couple of tries.
It was a missing link because our attack wasn't working with just that principle of 2 playmakers and no decision makers outside them.
Yes,
it doesn't work.
Generally speaking, under Joe Schmidt, this year excluded, or the back end of this year excluded, it has been an issue for Ireland where they aren't looking for that killer cutting edge. They are looking just to set it up and grind teams down. It's almost like when Ireland play the All Blacks, you feel like Ireland are dominating the whole time because they're in the 22 building their score for 10 minutes, and the All Blacks, it's like their line break is just a try instantly. Balls back on the halfway line, away we go. Ireland's try is 10 minutes of killing you, grinding it out,
and it's exerting pressure, and pressure does tire. And like, even going back to the Wasps game at the weekend, like, we didn't score a lot in the first half. We scored the Sean Cronin broke away at the start, but a lot of that second half was just Leinster probing and nearly breaking, and there were a few I think Cian Healy dropped 3 balls in the first half, which he'll be a bit disappointed in. But
it was a slow start to the season.
He has, rather, you know, and in scrum we were dominant, but I don't know how much, and I'm wondering about Toulouse. I'm curious. Yeah, I'm not entirely confident.
Jerome Kano banned for his tackle. Gonzo.
Yeah, I saw that. That was always going to happen because they are trying to get rid of. They're talking about getting rid of this high shot, which sure. I actually saw highlights of a game. Claremont were playing in the top 14s, and at one point there were 4 people sent off, 2 of them for high shots.
Red cards?
Claremont, no, there was a red card. There was a yellow card on. I can't remember who they were playing, but there was a yellow card on their side. 1 yellow card for a high shot on Claremont's side, 1 yellow card for repeated scrum infringements, and then a red card for a particularly violent hard shot. So at one point,
Claremont.
3 for Claremont, two yellows and a red at one point. And I think it was around the 50-something minute mark, and they still got a losing bonus point actually. Claremont are at the top, sitting pretty at the top.
Claremont would be one of those sides putting it to Leinster if they were in the competition. But
we love Claremont.
I digress. Anyway, we're probably about ready to wrap it up. Just before we do, we gotta, like, obviously we'll be back before then. We'll be back next week with any luck. But we're got to be buzzing about these November internationals which are coming up. You know, there's a lot of games, obviously. Super excited about all of them. Ireland going off to Chicago, New Zealand with a couple of tests in Japan, Bledisloe 3 followed by a game against Japan. That should be a bit of fun. And then obviously the big one would be Ireland against the All Blacks.
England against the All Blacks is an interesting game as well, though. I'm curious.
It's an interesting game just if you like seeing England get beat up by the All Blacks. England South Africa is a more interesting game.
That is very interesting.
And South Africa will win that too because England aren't doing things right at the moment. England,
unless they pick centres.
There's a conversation to be had about England that we will have in a later podcast about where it's like Brad Barrett with the 2 Saracens boys in the backline, Brad Barrett and Alex Good, seem to have been. I'm not sure if they've retired or if they've been shafted or what the story is. But England's just ignoring of what a centre is and ignoring of what a better fullback than Mike Brown is going to cost them. And it's going to cost them dear again unless Eddie Jones can get the finger out and start picking the right players in the right positions and doing the right things and putting Owen Farrell, one of the best 10s in the world, at 10.
Not accommodating George Ford, who's a fine club level 10. It's
not even it seems to be that the whole system is being done to accommodate Mike Brown. It's like, we can't have an Alex Good, you know. So we're gonna have, but we need 2 distributors. So we're gonna have 10 and 12 be a distributor. We're gonna move Farrell out of position. Also, Mike Brown can play.
We're going to have Lazowski then at 13, which is just at the least.
Or Tuilagi.
Tuilagi is playing well, actually. He's back now. Although they did, Ulster did for them. But
I mean, he's one of those guys. It's just it's a bit like Stockdale playing in Ulster, him playing in Leicester. It's just one of those things. He's a top player playing in a not top club. It is what it is.
It's true. But it's interesting to see how. Like, I would love to see them go back to that because, like, even you were watching that, we came up with the highlights of when they last beat the All Blacks. Who was playing? It was Owen Farrell at 10, Alex Good was at 15, Mike Brown was there but he was on the wing, and it was Brad Barrett was at 12,
Manu Tuilagi at 13. It's their best backline and they cut the All Blacks to ribbons. I don't know why we're not been seeing that. It's the other autumn talking point for me is Italy Georgia, which would be a fun one. Obviously.
That is one we are both looking forward to. Very eager for that one actually. I'm curious to see where Georgia got. I'm totally up for Georgia. Conor O'Shea be damned. He makes no bones about it.
Conor O'Shea be damned. It's time for the Georgian rising.
But the Italian clubs have been doing better and all that, but Georgia is one of the few games where it's actually the national sport, or for one of the few countries even where it's actually the national sport, so it's like, come on, get them into the big game, big leagues.
No money, so World Rugby is going to need to be dragged into acknowledging them.
Yes,
and them beating Italy would be that's almost a bigger game for them than the World Cup next year. Almost.
I thoroughly enjoyed them nearly beating Wales last year.
We missed that.
That covering as well. That was a great game. Scrumming down nearly. It should have been a penalty try, you know.
It should have been a penalty. Indeed.
But
what are you gonna do?
Lots of.
In fact, it was an arbitrary I mean, this is going way back to last November.
It's been a bit of a scatty
Georgia were playing in Cardiff last November, had a scrum, attacking scrum on the Wales 5. They were within a score, try wins them the game. They pick and go, they're on the line. People think they're going to win the thing. And then I think it's an arbitrary... Was it a penalty against them, or did he call it held up? It was something like that. Mad call that let Wales off the hook. But Georgia are
there, but their pack are certainly there.
Yeah.
I think they have more than a dozen props playing pro level football, footy as well. I don't know. Yeah,
but there's a year to go to the World Cup, and very often now this is time for the boys to start showing what they're showing. I mean, with the exception of Argentina and I think Australia, who are just going to show up and we'll see what happens. Everyone else is going to be trying to plot something from here, so it'll be curious to see. I think you're going to get a good idea, certainly in like the case of an unknown entity like Wales. You're going to get a good over this series, and then over the Six Nations, you're going to get a good idea of where they're at. And then if you're a gambling man, you'll be able, like in terms of Wales, you will be able to put money on what they're going to do based probably on what will happen over the next 6 months or so. With them, they're going to need to have something before they go over there.
It's true. They're it's shaping up to be almost as good a one as the last World Cup.
Actually, there are 2 tests in Japan. Just occurred to me that is World Cup prep. That's what they're doing. They're playing Australia and Japan, and then playing Japan. They just they're always doing things over there.
They're innovators.
They are.
So it's all shaping up to be exciting, and we're going to try and look at it. Try and get back to doing a few podcasts. Apologies for this one being a bit scatty, but as we said, it's been over nearly a year, so there's been a lot of rugby to talk about, and
hopefully
just kind of
some of it was legible, but more is the point. Is it's good to be back, happy to be back. We're going to have that breakdown video being coming. Hopefully, what I'm thinking about is every second Sunday. It won't be this Sunday, but it'll be maybe next Sunday, and then every second Sunday on, just a little sort of visual breakdown. I'm sort of playing with editing that thing, and we'll see what happens. And then also the blog is there, which I'm hopefully going to try and update once a week, write a little piece for that, and then hopefully get a podcast going once a week. So there we'll be back. The Overlap Rugby podcast show is back
bigger
in town,
and better,
bigger and better than ever.
Yeah, we do. We just want to. We always discuss rugby anyway, so it's good to have these chats. We did miss it.
Indeed.
We have. There are a few interesting things. It's a big year, obviously, with the World Cup cycle coming to its end, and we want to try and analyse things not just week on week from what's happened or who got yellow carded or what decision, none of that, but how the clubs and countries are all kind of gearing towards the World Cup.
Certainly going forward, this has been a bit scatty, and we actually turned this on. We had written like 1 or 2 notes down, but we turned this on with the intention of this being 20 minutes of basically saying hi, but we ended up chatting about rugby for a bit, but going forward we are going to have sort of more focused podcasts on certain topics and certain aspects of play, and then hoping to tie that in to basically the World Cup side and what's going on
there. There are definite trends happening in the game, one of which is that we're seeing more tries, which I'm happy with.
And kick tennis seems to be gone.
Kick tennis is gone. That's a good thing as well.
Basically, when we were looking at last year, we very clearly weren't the only ones looking at the Chiefs last year and going, bloody hell, this is what rugby should be. A lot of people are clued into that now.
Even like across the board, it's like you can see many tiers of it, but a lot of teams are more comfortable and confident with what they're trying to do ball in hand, I think. Across the board,
I think Pat Lam's kind of played a big part in doing that, especially this side of the pond, this kind of like this Celtic area, in terms of like now that's what Cardiff were doing.
Cardiff had great success doing it.
It was
even Edinburgh have added it. They're not to the same extent, but that's what they've added, that dimension to their game.
Everyone throws offloads because there are tries there, and tries are how you win rugby games, and people get that now.
Munster needs to throw some offloads.
It's true. So Munster needs some shape. Munster needs some shape. Exeter are a side who are going to slide, I suspect.
You reckon
so? Just watching them, and I'm just thoroughly unimpressed by what I'm seeing.
I really like the club though, and
for a team that doesn't, I mean we're ending this, but for a team that doesn't move the ball, to be so poor at managing their way through a game as they were against Munster in their home ground, they had the wind in the first half, they didn't use it right, and then the second round just to be utterly incapable of exiting their own half.
I think naivety is where they're at. I think there's growth, being steady growth there. I think they're being managed well. I just don't think they're lacking an understanding of what the big moments are. And
I certainly don't think they're on Saracens level, who are a genuine good team.
Okay, so we're getting a charge the battery pack notification. So we definitely we'll wrap it up on that.
Good to be back. Thanks for watching, and listen, we'll see you guys in a week. That's a promise. So there you go. as it was 11 months ago when we promised to be back in a week.
Indeed. See you soon.